Okay, welcome. It's week 15 and I'm back. I apologize for missing last week. Believe it or not, it was due to some overzealous recreational sports activities. So my face is a little busted up, so you won't see my beautiful mug this week. But we're still here nonetheless, and it's week 15. DraftKings says this is the last millionaire maker of the season. It's also the largest. So note that we have 126,000 entrants, which is the largest thus far, and 3 million total cash prizes. So what that means is that you're going to want to take a bit more of a contrarian approach and get some players in there that other people don't have. You're going to have to make some picks that go outside conventional thinking. All right, so we're going to start at the quarterback position. I'll just run through a few people I like this week. Last week, Drew Brees really let me down, but you have to have a short memory in daily, and he's got a tasty matchup against Chicago, who is just a defeated team. They've really been susceptible to the pass and the run second half of the season, and it's a super high over-under, 55 total points. So you know New Orleans is going to put up some points at home, in Chicago. And I like Drew Brees for a bounce-back game. He's not too expensive. I think he's a good value. And I think he puts up 300, 2 touchdowns, 300, 3 touchdowns. So I really like Drew Brees, and he's who I'm going to select this week in this lineup. And a couple other guys I really like. Roethlisberger, I'm going to have some exposure to him. Atlanta is the worst in pass defense, so they give up the most yards out of anyone in the league. You know that the Steelers are going to put up points. The question always with Atlanta when you're going up against Atlanta is who's going to get the points, because they're equally bad against the run as they are against the pass. So Le'Veon Bell could rush in 4 touchdowns and Roethlisberger's out of luck. In this case, with Le'Veon Bell being such a great pass-catching runner, I think Roethlisberger's a safe play here. He's been up and down, but more often than not, he's provided great value for his salary. And this week, 7,900, I have him in a couple stacks, and I also really like him as a play this week. If you want to go a bit more contrarian, which is fine in a tournament like this, Mark Sanchez had a really bad week last week, and they have one of the highest over-unders this week. I actually think it is the highest over at 55.5. Dallas has a respectable pass defense, but Sanchez is going to bounce back. He's pretty cheap. And if you go further down and you start getting into the Jake Lockers of the world, you're really going to start saving some money, okay? The Tennessee offensive line is beat up, and he doesn't have much time to throw. But the New York Jets have a terrible pass defense, and Locker's back for the second week. He's had some time. Delaney Walker, who I love this week, is going to get a ton of targets on those shorter routes. And he's not going to be heavily played. So you could easily do a stack. You know who the number 1 wide receiver is with Nate Washington, with Kendall Wright and Hunter out. And you know who the number 1 tight end is who gets a ton of targets. So you could easily stack Locker, Walker, and Washington, and they could both have 100 yards, and Locker could go for 250 with a few touchdowns. So I like the Locker play. And then lastly, I love the Derek Anderson play. So 5,000, you're not going to get much cheaper for a starting quarterback going up against top 5 worst pass defenses in the league. He put up 230 and 2 touchdowns first time around when he played him earlier this season. I expect a bit more. I really like Derek Anderson this week. I don't think he's going to have a heavy use, and it could put you ahead. But for the purpose of this lineup, I'm going with Drew Brees. And I'm actually not going to stack him. I think a lot of people have him stacked with Jimmy Graham, and I do think Jimmy Graham is due for a bounce-back week. He's just been awful lately. He's disappeared. I think he might be injured. Not quite sure what's going on. 2 weeks ago, he didn't have 1 target, and I don't know how you don't have Jimmy Graham with 1 target in a game. But last week, he picked up a few more targets, still didn't put up any numbers. But like I said, I love Delaney Walker this week. I think when Jake Locker plays a full game, he's actually a solid fantasy option. He puts up points. And with their decimated offensive line, I can see Walker getting another heavy dose of targets. Last week, he caught 4 passes, but he was targeted 10 times. And they're going up against New York Jets, which just gave up a ton of pass yards. So I have no problem playing Delaney Walker here. He'll probably have some usage, but I think the higher usage will be in the Jimmy Grahams, the Martellus Bennett, and the Gronkowskis. So this could be a place for you to catch up on some points. All right, moving on to the running back position. There are some awesome options up here. You've got Bell. We spoke about with Atlanta. He's going to put up a ton of points. He's just really expensive. And for that price range, I think that Foster and Forte provide similar value. I also think that with Brandon Marshall out, I think a lot of people are going to pick up Wilson. I think he's going to be heavily owned. He could be owned by 40% of the league. So when that happens, if Marquez Wilson, who is not a proven wide receiver, gets in the game and puts up a donut, you know Alshon Jeffrey is going to perform, and you know Matt Forte is going to pick up some of those throws. The Bears have been really inconsistent on running, so you don't know what Forte is going to get in terms of running attempts, which is never great in a number one running back. But going up against New Orleans, terrible rush defense. You saw what they gave up to Jonathan Stewart last week. A career day for him. I expect a really solid day out of Forte. But for my number one back, and you can fit in one number one back with this lineup I'm giving you, it's going to be Foster. Okay, Indianapolis is not good against the run. You're going to have a lot of points in that game, and Foster will also stay in the game for pass downs if they fall behind. Keep an eye on Andre Johnson, but if he doesn't play, you're going to have one wide receiver with Hopkins, and you're going to have Foster getting a ton of touches. I mean, he could see 30 total touches this game. You know he's going to get 20 plus. That's what you want in your running back. He's consistent. I love him this week, and that's what I'm going with. Now, because I spent that money, I have to get a value running back in here. And there are a few options here. I'm going to go – I really like Bell going up against Minnesota. It's a nice matchup, and Reggie Bush hasn't been taken much. It looks like Reggie Bush is still a bit hurt. So I expect Bell to get a big workload. If Rashad Jennings is hurt, keep an eye on Andre Williams. I'm fading Jonathan Stewart a bit. Tampa Bay is a bit better against the run, and they can make a messy game of that. I see Carolina scoring a lot of points through the air. So I think a lot of people are going to jump on Jonathan Stewart after last game. Alfred Morris, another great pick this week. Colt McCoy's hurt. Deshaun Jackson, keep an eye on him. But if he's hurt, I think they're going to lean heavily on Alfred Morris. But my pick is Chris Johnson, and here's why. Okay, he's a $3,600 price tag, so he opens up a lot of space for you. He's been getting his touches lately. Chris Johnson and Ivory have been splitting 16 to 18 carries or so. Johnson can also catch a couple out of the backfield. And with Rex Ryan's personality, going up against his ex-team, I see Rex Ryan giving Johnson a shot to really prove himself. I think Johnson's going to be heavily motivated. I really like this as a payback game. And with his recent production, the value is going to be there. I wouldn't fault you for putting Ivory in this position, but I like Johnson because of that personal element and that payback element. Okay, on to wide receiver. We spoke a bit about Marshall being out. For me, Alshon Jeffrey is a plug and play this week. I like his salary. I wouldn't fault you if you went for Hilton after last week, but I like Jeffrey. I think that with the over-under, Chicago's going to be behind. They're going to be throwing a ton. Keenan Lewis is one of the best cornerbacks in the game, but he's not healthy. He only got 10 snaps last week. I don't expect him to be on the field for the whole game. And even if he is, Jeffrey has the height to go over him. I see a lot of Marshall's targets going to Jeffrey. I see a 150 game with a touchdown or two. I really like him this week. And with everyone on Wilson, if Wilson has a bad game and you have Jeffrey, you're going to make up some ground there. Okay, secondly, going to another heavy dose of scoring. We're going to go down to the Atlanta-Pittsburgh game. If Julio Jones is out, you have to take a hard look at Roddy White and Harry Douglas. 5,800 for a team that's in a 50-plus over-under at home. Matt Ryan, he's going to be going to Roddy. He's going to find the end zone. He's still a bit hobbled with that ankle, but you get a number 1 wide receiver with a great quarterback at a really nice price. So keep an eye on Julio Jones to determine what to do there. But for me, I'm going to go down to Martavis Bryant. Okay, this guy's a beast. Antonio Brown's going to get his 14, 15 targets, but there's enough to go around Martavis Bryant. And Atlanta has a real problem with speed. They have a real problem with size. And I think Trufant's going to be guarding Antonio Brown. They're going to have someone – I think they're going to have someone helping Trufant, and it's going to open it up for Martavis Bryant. I think this guy puts up another 100-yard game. I think he puts up a touchdown or two, and he'll be less owned. And at a price tag of $4,800, he really opens things up for you. I like that play a lot. Roethlisberger is going to put up some yards, and it's going to have to go to someone. Brown and Bryant are my choices there. I do have a stack with them in another lineup. I really like this play here. Okay, so moving down to the defensive position. I really like these top 3 here. So the Lions, we know they're a solid defense. They're at home. It fits the profile. They're a favorite. That's what we want to see in a defense. Someone that's going to get ahead. They get a ton of sacks. Last week they had 6 sacks, and they haven't put up the touchdowns, but we could see some this week. I don't think Minnesota's going to be able to run the ball, and I think they're going to be relying on their passing. And while their wide receivers have come up a bit lately, Detroit is solid against the pass, and I see some turnovers here, and I like the Lions. I think people will be staying away from them just simply because of the price tag. The Seahawks have really been coming up lately. They've just turned it on. They've got some people back healthy from injury. They've got Wagner back in the center. They've got Smith back at linebacker. So they've got some players, and they've been turning it on. San Francisco just looks defeated. Kaepernick is broken, and that means interceptions. That means problems at home. I really love the Seahawks at home. So I'm going to select them for this lineup, but don't sleep on the Ravens this week. Okay, the Ravens are awful against the pass, and that is concerning. They give up pass yards and touchdowns to everyone through the air, but they're pretty solid against the run, even with Nada out. With Denard Robinson out for the year, I don't think Gerhardt's going to scare anyone. I think Baltimore shuts down the run, gets ahead in this game, and causes some turnovers. Bortles is going to throw some interceptions, and that opens the opportunity for them to score some touchdowns. So if you wanted to sub in either of these, that would be fine. It just depends on who you want in these positions. For this flex position, this week I like the value at running back. I like 2 players in this position. I like Latavius Murray, who at 4,000 will probably be heavily owned. He tore up Kansas City the first time around, but I don't think you can go wrong here. He's getting 20-plus carries for a team that's always behind, and I don't think that – and so what they have to do is they have to slow down this game. I don't think that you're going to see Murray get less than 20 carries, and you can't ask for anything more at a $4,000 salary. I love this play here. The other guy I really like is Steven Jackson, especially if Julio Jones is out. No one wants to select Steven Jackson. He's broken. He's got no knees, but the guy puts up value each week, okay? He's getting 16 carries. He had 50 yards and a touch. He got a couple touchdowns, and that was in a game that they were behind 21 points. He still got his touches. So I see the same thing this week at home. I see him getting 50 and a touch, and at 3,800, he's a tremendous value. So I think this would be a pretty good contrarian play, especially if Julio Jones is out. If you put Jackson in this position, you have 4,200 for your last wide receiver position. If you put Latavius Murray, you have 4,000. If you switch out the Ravens here, you have 4,200. So if I put the Ravens in here, 4,300. So in that range, in wide receiver range, in that range, you can find a few guys that you're going to have to take a chance on. This is a GPP with 125,000 people. You're going to need someone to step up. But you've got a guy like Robert Woods going up against an awful pass defense in Green Bay. You got a guy in Nate Washington I've already spoke about. Reggie Wayne, I'm staying away from Reggie Wayne. I think they're going to rest him. He's got a torn triceps. I think Moncrief is the play here. He got 50 snaps last week. We've seen what he can do when he gets his opportunities. He's put up 100 100-yard, 2 TD game before. This could be the week where Moncrief bounces back. So you've got some options. If Julio Jones is out, Harry Douglas is a great play. When Harry Douglas is a number 1 or number 2, he can put up 100 yards with 8 receptions. So don't sleep on Harry Douglas at home. And there's a few others. Wes Welker, Marquise Lee has been getting his in Jacksonville. And we spoke about the Baltimore pass defense. So you've got some options here at that wide receiver position to put in a contrarian play. And that's it for this week. So good week. Good week to win $1 million. This is the last one, so give it a shot and best of luck.